Welcome to Dharma Drops, a series of short talks where we explore the worlds of Buddhism, contemporary culture, and the day-to-day moments that make up our lives. Hi everyone, this is episode 1 of Dharma Drops. I thought it would be appropriate to start off with the first thing from the Dhammapada. And while I'm sure many of you know of this book, and if you've read it a million times, maybe you could look at it with fresh eyes. And for those of you that are new, it's definitely worth a read. I definitely read these over and over because it's like polishing a stone. It's one of those things where I think it's good to look at something a number of times because you're never the same person. And it's important to look deeply into something because you change as a person as you look into it. And I think it's a bit of a folly to think that on one read you know something. Early on I've read things and you think you might have gotten the wisdom from it, and it's almost when you go back to it and you look at it with different eyes, you realize that there's so much more to it. And sometimes you can reread it and get it at multiple layers. Sometimes you can read things over and over and realize that you're seeing it with such depth that there's so much more to it. This is a good starting point, I think, from this series of talks, and also maybe is a good revisiting point for any of you, or a good starting point for any of you that are listening to this podcast. So I'm going to read just a couple stanzas. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can pick the book up in, I'm sure, Amazon, or if you do happen to have a bookstore nearby you, it might be fun to go pop in and support your local bookstore. But I do have the little pocket version, which is handy to have. This one is the Dhammapada, and I believe it's the Shambhala version, and the translation is by Byron. So here we go. The first chapter is called Choices, and it starts off with, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts we make the world. Speak or act with an impure mind, and trouble will follow us, as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts we make the world. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will follow, as your shadow, unshakable. Look how he abused me and beat me, how he threw me down and robbed me. Live with such thoughts and you live in hate. Look at how he abused me and beat me, how he threw me down and robbed me. Abandon such thoughts and live with love. In this world, hate never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. You too shall pass away. Knowing this, how can you quarrel?" So I'm not going to go read the rest of it. You'll get the gist of it. But those words are written 500 years before Christ was born. And, I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago, and we talk about all the technology and the ways that people, how to communicate. And what I was mentioning is the methods change, but the human condition doesn't. We're dealing with the same things as humans are. And what he was saying so long ago is pertinent right now. I mean, look at the world and, hate and the pain and suffering and the retribution is going on right now. You realize it is just constant what's going on. So what we do have is how you live in the world and what you think about and what you filter the world through is what you have in your mind. That's where it all starts. And it is true. We have so much coming at us. And you are a slave to how you're feeling that and what is going on. And I'm not dismissing how much is where we live in, but the only thing we can control is how we feel and how we think. We can never control what our experiences are in the world, what is coming at us, but we can control how we decide to process that and how we decide to react. He was just saying in this, this narration, somebody's treating them badly, and you're sitting there mulling on that. Yes, that is true. The world has all these horrible things going on, and if you're going to ruminate on that, that is going to be the lens you're viewing the world through. It is up to us, the narrative that we're going to have. We're not going to live in a Pollyanna world where we are going to pretend that is not happening. That's not true. That's to live in a fantasy land. That's to negate life and to pretend that's not happening. That's silly. So we understand that there's pain and suffering in the world. That is one of the core realizations of living in the world. There is pain and suffering. But to live in that and to go return that's folly also. You have to realize that there is that going on, but you have to go create your own reality in your mind that that's going on. But what do? You cannot go let that hell world come into your mind. You have to go create the difference in your world, in your mind. So there's a sense of going with our minds, we create the world. We realize this is what's going on in the world. The world is also beautiful. You look around, there is the pain and suffering that people inflict upon each other. There is people that are in the hospital. There is things like that. But you look around, there is new birth and there's new wonderful things happening every day. It's what you focus on. There's always going to be the pain and suffering, but there's going to be the birth, the growth, the miracles happening every day. So it's what we decide to focus on. There's going to be the heroes in life. There's going to be the wonder. There's going to be the, the joie de vivre. There's going to be the new love. There's going to be, there's going to be, God, just the wonder of life happening every moment. There is the constant, it's life. You have to look at it in the totality. Life is everything. It is the light and the dark, and it's this constant. You go to the ocean to sit there, just sit at the ocean's edge and meditate for a minute. Watch the waves come in and watch them go out. Build a sandcastle. Look at that wonderful creation you have and look at the waves come in and take it away and pull it back into the sea. And then you could build another one. And it's this constant creation and destruction happening over and over. It's what you focus on. And you realize there's something even beyond all of that. There's something to focus on beyond all of the things that are seemingly such a horror. It's easy to get caught up in the seemingly distracting, horrific things. And also the same thing. There's the other side of the coin where it's the distraction of the busyness, the flash, the Las Vegas, part of the world. It's the two poles of this existence. You can be enamored with one or the other. They both go on. That's where there's a still point in the middle. And if you could sit there, and that's where the meditation comes in, you could sit there for moments and just still your mind, and then you can see the spinning worlds around you. And you go, oh, all of this is illusion. It just has different masks. Some of them are scary and some of them are beautiful. And you realize, oh, you know what? They're either like a Mardi Gras mask. Either they're really enamoring or they're really scary. But you look deeply inside of them, and neither one of them are true. They don't last. So don't get too caught up in them. When something is horrific, something is coming at you and getting you worked up, the horrors of war, what I would suggest is don't get caught up in that. Don't get pulled into that wave and get pulled into that maelstrom. Because if you do, you can, and people do, and they get part of that, and they feel justified. But it's an illusion, and it's really, I'm not diminishing it because there is a lot of pain and suffering, but it leads to more pain and suffering. And I do have a lot of compassion because everybody has felt it. Everybody's felt some level of pain and suffering and loss in life. And everybody hopefully has felt some love and some wonder and magic. And they're two sides of the coin. And they're both things that you can be lost in. But the pain and suffering is something that if you feed into it, it is like throwing gasoline on a fire. It's a never-ending cycle. It's one of those things where, going back to the passage I read, it's worth picking that up and looking at it and saying, whatever we create here, it does start with our minds. It starts, this world is, when you think about it, everything that is going on in the world is coming in through our senses, and we compile it and we make sense of it through our consciousness. You have to sort of think about it. I'm not saying we're living in a matrix world and it's a whole virtual reality, but in some sense there is the true reality is we are perceiving the world through all the senses and our consciousness. What we live here is the creation of our mind. So if we start there, the world we have is our mind's creation at a very good starting point. What we do have a control over is what we think. So going back to what the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, the very first chapter, the very first thing is saying, hey, the very first thing that you have control over, you can't control the world, but you control your thoughts. Start there. You wake up and you're in a bad mood. Stop. Think about what you're thinking. You can control that. You're not a slave to that. You might think you are, especially in the early days. I know when I was younger, that was the most foreign concept I can think of, going, you can control your emotions. You can control, I'm in a bad mood. I would think that was, something I could never even think about controlling until I learned better. Going, oh, you can change that. You could decide to think differently. You could decide to have a different thought, have a different feeling. These are all things that you have to be aware of first. And then you can start learning, how do I do that? And then you start realizing you're not indulging on what you think. And you start realizing, oh, everything that's coming in from the outside, you can start to decide. The TV, the millions of channels, and what you're streaming on all these devices, that is up to you, what you decide to let in. And you can start deciding what the programming is. With our thoughts, we create the world. It's one of these little gems that you've just uncovered. You go, oh, wow, this is a dharmic gem that you go, this is something that can unlock the rest of your lifetimes. It sends you down a whole different path. It's like unlocking a cyclical existence. It can change your whole path. Just think, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption. It's an old movie now, but somebody's in a prison and they go, oh, you know what? If I start doing this, maybe in many years from now, I can escape this. And we were in this lifetime, and we're in multiple lifetimes living in this existence. And then what we can do is we can start to decide, you know what? Every day forward, it can be better. And it could be happier, it could be brighter, I could have more fulfilling and happier relationships. Things can be better. They don't change overnight, but they could be better each day, and maybe each hour, and maybe they can change by leaps and bounds, and some days they are a lot of work. But it's all about first finding a key and then doing the work. It all starts with the step. So it's a Dharma drop. So thank you for joining. I hope to see you on the second podcast. I look forward to it. Thank you and good night.